We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Aleph on Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 11b. This daf is sponsored by Alexander Rosenfeld in memory of Rav David ben Rav Shmuel Halevi Steinmetz. Thank you for your sponsorship. If you'd like to sponsor an Amar Daf, see the description box below to see how you can support this channel. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought a Machlokas Tanoim. We said that by the Levona, by the frankincense, if it's missing, so then we say that it's puzzle. It's disqualified in such a situation. And the question is, how much has to be left that it's still considered to be kosher, or how much has to be missing that it's considered to be puzzle? And the Gemara brought a brisa on the previous summit. Rabbi Yehuda said, as long as two tiny amounts are left, that is sufficient. Rabbi Shimon said, as long as one tiny amount, kord echad, one tiny amount is left, that is sufficient. And the Gemara now asks, V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa, and Rashi over here says, V'atanya hakometz hasalavona kemedum eli. It seems to me, da'iri bo Rabbi Shimon, that this brisa is Rabbi Shimon, and kaparach minol Rabbi Shimon. That's why the question that's about to be asked is against Rabbi Shimon's shita. This brisa says, again, I'm presuming according to Rabbi Shimon, kometz ulavona shechaser kol shu basel. By the kometz and the lavona, if any amount is missing, it is puzzle. Rabbi Shimon said it could be missing more than just a small amount could be missing. As long as you have a tiny amount left, it's still okay. And so how do we reconcile Rabbi Shimon? And the Gemara says, Tani, rather it should be taught in this brisa, the wording should have been, Kort levona shechaser kol shu puzzle, that if you have a Kort levona, you have that tiny amount left, that minimum amount left, and then it loses some of that, then it is puzzle. That would explain the contradiction. If you want, we could say, Kan belevona haba im ha-mincha. In one case, we're talking about frankincense that comes together with a carbon mincha, and kan belevona haba b'fnei atzma. But here we're talking about levona that is brought on its own, it's brought independently. And Rashi explains, Levona haba im ha-mincha, when you have a levona that's brought with a mincha, im chasr b'shas haktara ksheira l'Rabbi Shimon. So if at the time of the burning of the kometz, at that time some of the levona is missing, it's kosher according to Rabbi Shimon. Kediyolef l'kamei, like we'll learn later on, mikol ha-levona asher al-mincha, from the pasuk, mikol ha-levona asher al-mincha, v'hayde katani chasr kol shu pasel b'levona haba b'fnei atzma. When it says chasr kol shu, any amount is missing, it's pasel, that's by levona that's brought on its own. Kigon ha'omer harei olai levona. Let's say somebody just takes a neder, I'm going to bring levona. Yavi malo kometz levona al mizbeach. He has to bring a fistful of levona on the mizbeach. Beperek ha'omer harei olai yisaron. That's later on. The hasam vadei chaser pasel. There, certainly if it's missing, it's pasel. The lo ksibbe v'yaskol halavona. It doesn't say the words v'yaskol halavona. The alfinan minol lekamon kol afilu kolshu. That's where we learn out. That's the source again, that even a small amount, and so therefore again, when it comes to a levona that's together with a mincha, that's where Rabbi Shimon says it only needs to have a quart, one tiny amount, and it's still kosher. But by levona haba b'fnei atzma, there, even if it's missing a tiny amount, it will be puzzle. And the Gemara continues and summarizes the Machlokas Tanoim. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Gimel Machlukas b'davar. It's a three-way Machlokas. Rabbi Meir Savar, Rabbi Meir holds, that's our Mishnah. Rabbi Meir holds kometz betchila. Originally you have to have a kometz of levona. The kometz basof, and you have to have that full kometz at the end. Missing any amount is going to be puzzle. Rabbi Yehuda Savar kometz betchila. Rabbi Yehuda says also it has to start with the kometz, but at the end, ushnei karton basof, even two small amounts at the end, 2 pinches at the end is enough. For Rabbi Shimon Savar, Rabbi Shimon holds kometz v'tchila. Again, it has to start with the kometz, the kort echad basof, and even just one quart at the end, 1 pinch is going to be enough. Ushloshdan mikra echad darsh. When the Gemara says all three tanoim are darshaning the same pasuk, it says in the pasuk, this is the pasuk Rashi just brought, v'es kol halavona asher ala mincha. It says v'es kol halavona asher ala mincha, all of the lavona that's on the mincha. So how do we understand that pasuk? Rabbi Meir Savar ad isa lavona deikva bahade mincha. The same amount of levona that was there at the beginning has to be there at the end. For Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Rabbi Yehuda says kol va'afilu chad kort. If it just said the word kol, that would mean 1 pinch. Es l'rabos kort acher. The word es says another quart, another pinch. So you have to have 2 quarts. For Rabbi Shimon, es lo darsh. Rabbi Shimon doesn't darsh an es, and so therefore he says again 1 quart will be sufficient. Rashi explains Rabbi Meir stam masnisin. Rabbi Meir is just the unattributed Mishnah. The katani chiser levon tapsul. It says if it's missing any amount, it's puzzle. Kometz betchila, kometz at the beginning, b'shas kmitza, at the time the fistful of flour is taken, bo'inan shia bekli mole kometz levona. There, everybody agrees there has to be a fistful of levona in the vessel. V'hakula modu, that everybody agrees to. The mitchila boy kometz, that from the beginning, at the beginning of the mincha, you need a kometz of levona. Chudi alfinan migzer shava. That's going to be learned from migzer shava, b'perak omer harei alai yisaron later on. The kometz basof, b'shas haktaras levona shalo tachzer. Again, according to Meir, it can't be missing anything. Rabbi Yehuda Savri have a kos of kol mashma dafilu cord echad. If it said kol, even one cord could be enough. De kol mashma kol shu, because kol is any amount. K'moin l'shivchas l'kol. Es l'rabos cord echad. But the word es says another cord. Harei v'shnayim. That's the total of 2, according to Rabbi Yehuda. And es lo darish. Rabbi Shimon doesn't darshan es. V'chol mashma le kol du Rabbi Yehuda. So the word kol just means any amount, like Rabbi Yehuda said. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Machlokas b'lavona haba im hamincha. Again, the machlokas tanoim is by lavona that comes with a carbon mincha. Aval b'lavona haba b'fnei atzma, but if the lavona is coming on its own, divrei hakol, everybody agrees, kometz b'tchila v'kometz basof, it has to be a full kometz in the beginning and the end. Lahachi itzrich asher ala mincha, that's what the words in the pasuk asher ala mincha are needed for. Devahade mincha in, this halacha applies when it's with a mincha, b'fnei atzma lo, but if it's by itself, this halacha does not apply. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Machlokas b'lavona haba im hamincha. Again, the machlokas tanoim is by lavona that's coming with a carbon mincha. Aval b'lavona haba b'bazichin, but the lavona that comes in the bazichin, that refers to the frankincense in the spoons by the lechem haponim that's on the shulchan in the Beis HaMikdash, that essentially has the status of the kometz that's taken by a carbon mincha. So over there, divrei hakol shnei kamotzin betchila, everybody agrees it's 2 kometz total in the beginning, ushnei kamotzin basof, and it has to be the full 2 kometz at the end. The Gemara says, Pshita, well, isn't this obvious? In other words, this is also a situation where it's on its own. Why would we think that it would be the same as if you have bazichin, if you have lavona that comes with a carbon mincha? This is not with a carbon mincha. The Gemara says, no, ma'od detema, what might you have said? Kevan devahade lechem asya, since the bazichin, the spoons of lavona, are accompanying the lechem aponim, so they are together with lechem in a sense. So kasher ala mincha dami, it's like it's accompanying a mincha, and maybe it should follow the same halachas. Maybe the same machlokas tanoim should apply. Kamash malon. So that's what Rabbi Yochanan is teaching, that this is considered independent, and the machlokas tanoim does not apply. Everybody agrees you need 2 kometz in the beginning and at the end. And the Gemara continues, Pligi bar Rabbi Ami for Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. There's a machlokas between Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. Chadamar machlokas belavona haboim mincha. One says that the machlokas is by the lavona that's with a mincha. Aval belavona haba b'fnei atzma divrei hakol kometz betchila v'kometz basof. The lavona, if it's brought on its own, everybody agrees it has to have the full kometz in the beginning and the full kometz at the end. The Chadamar, however, one opinion says, K'machlokas bazu, the same machlokas tanoim that we find by the lavona that accompanies the carbon mincha, kach machlokas bazu, so too there's the same machlokas tanoim by the lavona that is on its own. And Rashi explains bazichin, the spoons of lavona with the lechem aponim. Mefarish beperaka omer harayolai isaron the boy chad kometz bechol bazach ubazach. You need to have 1 kometz in every spoon by the lechem aponim. That's 1 kometz of lavona. Pshita the halok sibba kol the lishtama kolshu. So it seems obvious. It doesn't say the word kol. There's no reason to think otherwise. Kasher la mincha dami. But then the Gemara said, no, maybe it's the same as with a mincha. V'lei manami dahai kol halavona asher la mincha. We can say that when the pasuk says kol halavona asher la mincha, which again sounds like it's only talking about with a carbon mincha, but koinami alavona the bazichin, maybe that is going also on the lavona of the bazichin. V'lidrosh ba kaldu kamash malon. We should make that same drasha of kaldu and kamash malon. We don't make that drasha. That's what the Gemara is teaching. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said chiser lavon tapsul. If some lavona is missing, then it's possible it's disqualified. The Gemara says hayasir kashera. The implication from the Mishnah is that if there's too much lavona, it's kosher. V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa otherwise. Yasir psula, that if there's too much, it's possible, it's disqualified. And the Gemara answers, Amar Rami bar Chama kagon shehifresh lo shnei kamotzin. For example, let's say he separated for it 2 kamotzin, that's 2 fistfuls of lavona, and there are actually 2 versions in Rashi in terms of what Rami bar Chama is saying. Is hifresh lo shnei kamotzin, is that the case where it's kosher, or is that the case where it's pasul? Now again, that's 2 versions in Rashi. Rashi explains, shehifresh lo shnei kamotzin psula. First version of Rashi is that if he separated 2 kamotzin, which is too much, it's pasul. The yoser midairi, because it's too much, he increased it by too much, and then already it's pasul. And then in the Lishna Achrina, Rashi says, Lishna Achrina v'lo shamati, another version, kagon shehifresh lo shnei kamotzin keshera. When he separated 2 kamotzin, the Gemara means there it's kosher. The Aminan zil lagabe dahai chazile, zil lagabe dahai chazile. We say, if you look at this amount, this kometz, it's going to be kosher. If you look at the other one, it's going to be kosher. Lo hukvu keshera, so therefore it's considered kosher. The lo karina be prat l'shechasra afilu Rabbi Meir. We don't say that Rabbi Meir again said that we exclude if there's too little. We don't say that here. The pasal b'chisur levona, again, Rabbi Meir says that if you have too little, he says pasal hukvu, that it's fixed at too little. V'have chisur levonta b'shas akdaru, pasal Rabbi Meir, that's considered chisur levonta at the time of burning, and it's pasal according to Rabbi Meir. But we don't say that in this situation of two kamatzim. That's the second version of Rashi in terms of understanding what Rami Bar Chama means. And the Gemara continues, V'yomer Rami Bar Chama, and Rami Bar Chama says, Hifresh lo shnei kamatzim. Let's say he separated two kometz of levona. Again, that's too much. V'yovad echad mehen, and then one of them was lost, so you only have one, which is the right amount. If it was lost kodem kamitza, if it was lost before the kamitza was taken, so lo hukvu, it wasn't established, it wasn't fixed, and it's actually kosher in that case. It's not considered to have too much. But achar kamitza, but after the kamitza, if then it's lost, hukvu is already established as too much, and then it will be problematic. And Rashi explains, Kodem Kamitza Nevad, if before the Kamitza was lost, Lo Hukvu, it's not established, it's not fixed. Im HaMincha with the Mincha, Ksher, it's kosher. But Hukvu, but if it's established, V'have Ki Yeser, then it's going to be too much, Upsula, and it will be puzzle, it will be disqualified. And the Gemara continues, V'yomer Rami Bar Chama, and Rami Bar Chama says, Hifresh Arba Kamatzin L'shnei Bazichin, let's say he separates 4 kamatzin, 4 fistfuls for the 2 bazichin with the lechem upon him, so that also is too much, it's supposed to be a total of 2, instead he has a total of 4. V'yavdu Shnayim Mehen, and 2 of them are lost, the same scenario. Kodem Siluk Bazichin, if it's before the removal of the spoons, Lo Hukvu, it's not yet fixed, and therefore it's okay. La'achar Siluk Bazichin, but if it's lost after the removal, so that was too much, Hukvu was fixed as too much, and it's a problem. The Gemara asks, Hasu Lamali, why does Rami Bar Chama have essentially the same exact case twice? One case it's 2 kamatzim by a regular situation, then 4 kamatzim by the case with the lechem upon him. What do you need both those cases for? Hainu hach, it seems to be identical. The Gemara says, Mao deteim, what might you have said? Kevan de borer kometz dida. When it comes to the lechem upon him, the kometz is clear from the outset. You don't have to separate it. You don't take a fistful. It's whatever is in the bazichin. So since it's already set, kevan sheigias manu lefarko. So maybe even if the time comes to remove it, keman de prikadam, even if it wasn't yet removed, it's as if it was removed. Kamash malan, that's what it's teaching. No, it's the same thing. And Rashi explains, Shehigias manad de karva musaf, and the time to remove the bazichin is when the musaf is offered. Keman de perika damya, so maybe it's like it was removed. V'yamavad la'achar musafin, and if that were the case, if it got lost after the musaf, after the karva musaf, emo hukvu kvaru pasla, maybe then it is already established and fixed and it's disqualified. Kamash malan, that's what it's teaching us, that is not the case. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, HaKometz as HaMincha, if somebody takes the kamitza, the fistful of a karva mincha, and he has in mind lechol shireh bachutz, that he's going to eat the remaining part of the karva mincha outside of the proper place, o kezayis mishireh bachutz, or kezayis of what remains outside of the proper place, or lahaktir komsa bachutz, or he has in mind to burn the kometz outside of the proper place, o kezayis komsa bachutz, or a kezayis of the kometz outside of the proper place, o lahaktir levonta bachutz, or to burn the levona, the frankincense. It's frankincense outside of the proper place, puzzle. In all of these cases, it's disqualified. The idea over here is that he has in mind at the time of the kmitza some kind of consumption. It can be either the consumption by people, that's lechol shireh bachutz, to eat the remainder outside of the proper place. He has that intention, or it could be the consumption of the mizbeach, that he's going to have lahaktir komsa. He's going to burn the kometz outside of the proper place, or he's going to burn the levona outside of the proper place. Any types of intentions in that fashion outside of the proper place, in terms of any of the consumptions, whether it be the consumption by people or the consumption by the mizbeach, puzzle, we say puzzle, ve'ein bo kares, but there is no kares in a situation where the intention, the wrong intention, is outside the proper place, as opposed to outside the proper time. So even though that does disqualify the carbon, but there's no kares in such a situation if one would eat from that carbon. Now, lechol shireh lamachar, let's say the intention is to eat the remainder tomorrow, meaning outside the proper time. O kazayis mishireh lamachar, or a kazayis from what remains tomorrow. Or lahaktir komsa lamachar, again, consumption of the mizbeach, to burn the kometz tomorrow outside the proper time. O kazayis mi komsa lamachar, or a kazayis from the kometz tomorrow outside the proper time. O lahaktir levona lamachar, or to burn the levona, the frankincense, tomorrow outside the proper time. In those cases, when the intention is outside the proper time, then the carbon becomes what is called pigul, and in such a situation, not only is it disqualified, but there is kares as well if one eats from that carbon, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph.